Hello? Hey!
I know.
All right. The union's not back from lunch yet. So we're gonna keep going if you guys aren't sick of me yet. Talk a little bit more in depth about digital asset management as opposed to technology in general. And you know, DAM is something that I think everybody's kind of getting involved with these days. Has many purposes and unique functions for different organizations, and different companies use it in different ways. And I was just actually speaking to somebody before I came up here about some of the preconceived notions of what DAM is. And we want to kind of give different perspectives of, it's not so much what is DAM and what does it do, it's what problems do we have and how can we apply DAM to solve that. So with that, again, I'll go down the line, let you guys introduce yourselves and kind of talk about how you use DAM in your organizations to support your creative teams.
Sure. My name is Jenna Kreindel. I'm a senior analyst of digital asset management for Nickleodeon, and our team handles the off-air library for Nickleodeon, so that houses assets that are created for use for print, web, digital, consumer products, social, and a variety of other uses. So on a daily basis, our graphic design teams, our production design teams, animators, web designers, people who work on social media, they're having to access our DAM to get assets to brand any type of work that they're doing.
Hi, I'm Brigette Supernova. I work at Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund. And our DAM is both legacy, meaning it's past work, and our historic archives, as well as our current production tool. And we have what's called an enterprise DAM. And I meaning the DAM, because I'm a team of one. Go nonprofit. So I serve the creative team. I also work with the communications team. I work with the Office of the President, the press and media, national and local. We work with the brand and marketing team, the global team, health and education, social media, third parties such as book publishers, and then I also serve over two different. Planned Parenthood is actually two separate organizations. There's the political arm and then the health and education and medical services. So our DAM is actually built to serve both of those clients as well. So that's internal information I have to keep track of for legal reasons, so it's extra fun. Yeah, and our DAM is meant to be a tool that kind of, you know, helps our affiliates and our national offices have one unified brand and messaging, and also so that we're making sure that our best foot is always put forward. As I'm sure you know, all eyes are always on us, so yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan Rosenberg. I lead the video asset management department at Timing Studios, so that encompasses properties such as Time, Fortune, People, Sports Illustrated, Travel and Leisure, Food and Wine, and Style. The list goes on. So what we're really trying to do is help Time Inc. make the jump from being, you know, the world's largest magazine publisher, because nobody reads magazines anymore, to be a real media company. And video has played a huge part of that. When I started with the company 3 years ago, there was no asset management system. The archive consisted of hard drives in people's desk drawers, and our staff was about 60 people. And if you fast forward to now, our staff is about 330 people. We're doing about 1 billion video views a month and producing about 50,000 videos a year. So my team supports all the producers and the editors by taking all the content on the way in, making sure it adheres to naming conventions and taxonomy, tagging it with metadata, making sure everything is tagged appropriately and is workable in our system. Yeah.
And at the NHL, we're actually in the middle of celebrating our centennial anniversary right now. So when I came on board with the league, I was tasked with digitizing the entire history of video, film, photos, documents, whatever physical media we had. We wanted to digitize and implement a new asset management system to merge that with the existing digital content and kind of put it all together. So right now we're looking at somewhere around 12 million assets in our system, and that grows significantly every season, as you can imagine. So with that, tell me about some of the steps that your creative teams have to take to interact with your dam, because I think, what we touched on in the technology session and before the break was that there needs to be more communication and collaboration between the creative and the operations teams and the technology sides. So what steps do your creative people have to take to interact with the technology?
So right off the bat, we realized that, the dam is very technical, the back end, the way that it looks, it's not really intuitive. So what we do is we're providing a service. We're not asking them to ingest data or to imply metadata. We are the dedicated team that does that, and we have a custom-built portal that sits on top of our dam that our end users access. So it's more like a website where they can go in and they have their facet tree, which is built on our taxonomy that's pulled in from the dam, where they can click on and click off, similar to how Amazon would work. And then if they want to download an asset, they can do a direct download, or they can just simply add it to their basket. There's a little cart icon. They can check out, and they'll just get an email with a download link that'll be a zip file that will just be whatever they need. So we really try to provide a service where we're not asking them to do so much, and we're just trying to handhold them so that they spend the least amount of time in the system for them to get exactly what they need.
Yeah, I would say similarly, I want to make it as easy as possible for our creatives, especially in our organization. People have to work, we are doing a lot of rapid response type work. So I just want them to get in there as quickly as possible and find what they need. All of our creative team has a high level of access and permission level. They can download anything that they can find. They don't need me to approve an order. If there are outside parties, there's a little bit more of a vetting system in place, and that's just so that we can ensure that the right people are getting the right assets. And I can kind of ask them, what do you actually need, because they may not know. So I also serve as a tool and a librarian of sorts to help them out. And I just do the best I can to let everybody know that I'm available as a human being. If you don't have the time, let me know, I'll do it for you. That's part of my job. So we just try to make it as quick and easy as possible. And just super simple interface for anyone, just do a search, download, done.
Similarly, we control pretty much ingest and metadata application, as well as archive and restore from archive, because we have a pretty extensive B-roll library. So when somebody goes out and shoots something for Travel and Leisure or Sports Illustrated swimsuit, they end up getting a lot of really good scenics that we can then turn around and repurpose. So we essentially have two classes of users. We have people who are simply doing search and retrieval, and our system is pretty basic, where it's a Google-style search, and then you can facet and add filters where appropriate. And then we have the other groups, which are our video editors and producers, who have to interact with the system in a fairly robust manner. So we've had to develop training classes, which I lead. We've developed pages and pages and pages of documentation for any kind of situation that an editor might find themselves in, because we're also really focusing on standardizing workflow, because before we had a system to do that, everybody just kind of edited however they want, in whatever flavor of video they wanted, without really any thought as to what they were going to be dealing with on the back end. So we've really tried to standardize that as much as possible, so everything comes in X number of flavors, and by the time they're actually working with it, it's one flavor. But there's a pretty extensive training process that anyone who's going to edit video has to go through, because otherwise they're going to have no idea how to check in and check out of the system and make sure it's interacting with all the other pieces of technology we use, like Adobe Premiere for editing, our archive, our transcode and render farms. So again, it's based on the class of user.
So it's the scenics you have to worry about when the Sports Illustrated stuff comes back. That's what you're worried about people getting into? So when we implement dam solutions, there's this glorious picture of how this is going to solve all of our problems, and sometimes things get better and some things don't always work out as planned. Can you guys speak a little bit to some of your successes and also some of your failures in getting your system set up, and really the positive impacts that you've been able to accomplish, and some of the lessons learned that you've tried to capitalize on going forward?
One of our main successes is that we do have constant communication with our stakeholders and the teams within Nickelodeon that use our site. We want to send out surveys. We want to make sure that we're providing them with every tool that they need to be able to do their job. So, we're able to do everything that they need, and we have this website where they can go in and they can get their assets, and we want to make sure that everything's easy to find, because they really like our tool. So a failure is also that because we want to provide everyone with the service that they need, we have a lot of customizations. And so because we've customized everything so much to be able to service all of our teams, we've kind of hit a wall with our back end where it can no longer be scalable with the business. So we're actually working right now to find a new vendor to move over to, so that we can not only provide the service that we're doing, but more, and we can onboard different departments because we'll be able to customize things for them that we're not able to do today.
I would like to say there are no failures. There's only an opportunity to change. With us, our creative team is actually a fairly new concept within our organization. It's only a few years old. So for me, a success is anybody even knowing that the dam exists or that I exist, and that it is a tool to make their job easier. And any time that we can change, especially like a creative person's behavior, and I can make their job easier, to me that's a success. So every time they remember to use the dam instead of going to Dropbox or Google folders or their hard drives, anytime that they don't do that, that's a success for me. So we're taking baby steps. We're very new, but I think every day we're building on that.
Yeah, I'll echo that in that now that we actually have a robust searchable database, the opportunity for our brands, excuse me, to share amongst each other has increased quite a bit, because we service about 25 main Time Inc. brands in our New York office right now. And within each of those brands, there can be up to 3 teams that all have different workflows and different delivery specs and different turnaround times, whether it's quick hit news or digital featurettes or more long form content. There can be so many moving parts. And this side never knew what this side was doing, but now that it's all available to everybody, there's so much more sharing going on, so much more collaboration. So that's a major success. And similarly to what Jenna's team seems like they're dealing with, because we have so many brands and so many moving parts, we did do quite a heavy bit of customization, and that does make the product a little more clunky, because you keep trying to solve for edge case after edge case after edge case, and this team says we need to do this, and another team says, okay, but we need to do that, and you try to make one system do all those things, and you're going to reach a point where it's just going to stop working the right way.
I think that our biggest success was just overcoming the sheer volume of work that needed to be done. As I said, we're up to about 12 million assets right now. In the first 6 months, we digitized 100,000 hours of video, 500,000 photos, 1 million documents, and just getting all this content into the system, from the logistics of packing up the physical media, shipping it out to vendors, getting it back, making sure every piece came back, every piece has a file associated with it, putting that file into the dam, verifying that it's not a corrupt file, and just we have a proxy for every piece of video. Just overcoming that mass amount of stuff was incredibly challenging, but something that I think we did very well. What we didn't do, because we went so fast, was make sure that we got all the data at the time of capture. So that's kind of where we are now. We're sort of in the second phase to clean up what we put in there and make sense of it all, because really I think the value that comes out of your dam is really associated with the data more than the assets. You could put millions of assets into a repository, but with no data, you'll never find them. So you might as well just be throwing them back on the shelf that they came from.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
Just to give a specific moment of success, I think it's also really important when anytime you can get your senior leadership on board, or you get them to buy in, not only with DAM, but with any of your creative processes or your tools that make your efficiencies better. For me, I think I had a really exciting moment when our executive vice president used the DAM and sent out an actual hyperlink and a press release, because that shows that she trusts the tool and she trusts the work that I did to build that, to send it out nationally. And that was a really exciting moment. So anytime you have those things like that, you can get senior leadership on board, you're doing great.
So it kind of gets into the question of what is DAM? Or a lot of times you'll hear people say, we need a DAM, we need get from the dam. It's digital asset management. You don't go to the digital asset management. You know, it's really more of an approach to business and a mentality than a product itself. So what are some of the perceptions about DAM that you guys have gotten from your teams, and what would you like to change to sort of, you know, give them more of a understanding about what DAM is?
I think the main thing is that, you know, I'll run into someone in the elevator in the cafeteria and we'll talk about like what we do, and I'll tell them and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know somebody did that. So I think that that's the hardest thing, is that they don't realize that the hard work that is going on behind the scenes. You know, we have a librarian on our team that really works with the taxonomy to make sure that we have a robust classification method so that people can find things the way that they need. You know, we're really meticulous in our keywording and our metadata, and there's all this information that we have to capture for each asset so that you know exactly what you're looking for, what it's supposed to be used for. And so I think that if people kind of took the time to realize all of the hard work that we on the DAM do, that I think that it would help them better find things that they need to find, and realize that if they're giving us the information, we can capture it in the asset, and then it will live with it on forever.
Yeah, I think similarly, the dam, just because you have access and availability to it, and just because it's there, it's not like build it, they will come, you're done. It's building is only the first step. It's a living thing, and it's only as good as the information that's shared with me. So it's not a perfect tool. It's not a one-time thing. It's always living and expanding and evolving, and we're always refining the vocabulary that we use. You know, I let my users know that I'm looking at what you're doing. I'm looking at how you access it, and I want to know when something's not working. I don't want you to abandon it, because we can make adjustments to make it a working tool for you. And I think people need to understand that it's a living thing, and it's always growing and it's always changing.
Yeah, I think that's something that people on our side or on our teams have had a little trouble grasping as well. They really, when we first rolled the system out, saw it as, you know, we have to do all this extra work and now all these extra steps, and I just want to lay my video down on a sequence and cut it. Like, why do I have to do all these things? And then when you come at them like, oh, you have to go to this class, and then, hey, maybe you should read this little pamphlet before you go to class so you're ready for class, and people's eyes just start to glaze over, and it becomes a little bit of a battle. But then when you can actually, you know, show them the worth of the tool and how, you know, a little bit, you know, 30 to 60 seconds of extra effort on the front end will really make everything you do further down the process that much easier. You know, showing them little wins, like, hey, hey, we can pull this thing from the archive, and you don't have to go find where it is in somebody's desk drawer. Or, you know, oops, your computer crashed, but guess what? The system saved, you know, like 10 different copies in a few different places. Like, we have all these things. Or we thought we lost this piece of video forever. Nope, you know, it's right here. Like, we have it whenever you need it. So some of that perception can change pretty rapidly if you are able to demonstrate little wins along the way. And as far as anything I would change, I think that just being able to show people how this product helps the company make more money, and thus we can hire more people to do the things you do, and then, you know, it's better for everybody.
I think I'd like to add on to what Brigette had said about DAM being kind of a living, growing thing. You know, have you guys ever heard somebody ask, are you guys done with that DAM yet? Did you finish? It's never finished, because you can always add more data, more value, more to your assets, and you can gain insight about what people are using, what they're accessing, and all of this information, as the more people get into it, the more that grows, and the more you can decipher from it. So in some of my experience, I would say that one of the biggest challenges is explaining to people that this is not just a project with a start date and an end point. It's something that goes on forever. And I mean, look, we're hockey. We're going to have another season this year, you know, like it's never done, because we have all this new stuff coming in. So, but with that, let's talk about some security and permissions-based discussions, and talk about some of the things in your organizations where you have to limit access, because really the dam, we all hear about it being used to provide access, but you don't always want to give everybody access to everything. So Jenna?
Not only do our internal creative teams use our website, we also have external vendors that use it. So we have a robust security model. We have different content types, and each content type has a security wrapped around it. So when an internal user signs up for an account, they're just getting access to general artwork. And then we have separate security groups for publishing, or for the recreation business, or for the theme parks, and they have to be approved to get access to that. And not only do we not want them, we're limiting their access, we also want to make sure that we have separate instances. So like when we have our dam for press and photography, it's a separate page dedicated to press and photography. When you do a keyword search there, you're only going to get return results that are press and photography related. We don't want to intertwine everything because it could be confusing to people. They might not know what this specific asset should be used for. They might have access to it and use it for something and they're not approved to do so. So we really try to handhold them and make sure that they're looking for something exactly, that they don't have access to assets that wouldn't be of value to them, to clunk up everything in the system, that they're only seeing things that would be relative to the work that they would do in the system.
I think for us, security means something different than it does to most other corporations and organizations. Just given who we are as Planned Parenthood, we're always under a watchful eye, and there's always somebody trying to take us down, even if it's just for giggles or whatever motivation they may have. So we actually have really robust cybersecurity. In the case of setting up our dam, I worked with our cybersecurity team, and we actually basically hired professional hackers to see if they could break the system, and they couldn't, which is great. But it was also about seeing if they could infiltrate it, if they could penetrate it without having a user login, if they could upload viruses and things like that. And it's something I think most people don't even have to think about, but it's something that we did. So that was like step number one. Other than that, I would just echo what she said. We give different permissions to people based on what their needs are. And I just try to vet people within the organization, whether it's a third party. And we also have like a press and media kit where at the moment I've just made it, you don't even have to have a user login. These are all vetted images and videos that anybody can use. We don't care if they're out there for the entire world to use. They're safe, they're vetted, and I make it as easy as possible for people just to be able to download them without having to go through me, because we're just at such an infant level in our dam that's just, I'm one person and I can't pick up the phone every 2 minutes for every press person. So we have a set of a media kit that anybody could download, and that's, we just made sure that those were cleared.
Similarly with our finished assets live up in the cloud. We're not super concerned about the security of those, because once they're finished, they're cut. We're a media company. We want as many people to see our product as possible. So we're not as stingy there. Where it becomes tricky is the tightrope we walk internally, because again, with all of our different brands, there's so much different content, and we want there to be cross-brand sharing. We want people to be able to work collaboratively. We want people to be able to use, travel and leisure scenics as opposed to going to Getty and paying Getty to give us the same footage, which we may have actually licensed out to Getty, and then we're paying Getty for our own footage. So we really do want them to be accessible through all the teams, but then we have several other things which really have to be kept under tight wraps, such as Sports Illustrated swimsuit. We're keeping that under as high security as possible. We do several things throughout the year.
For the scenics, right?
For the scenics. And between that and we have People's Sexiest Man Alive that's coming out this month. We don't want anybody to know who wins before it actually gets published. Same thing with Time Person of the Year or Time 100 or any of those other yearly event type things we do. We try to keep our Essence Fest lineup under wraps. So it's very important to be as granular as possible with permissions managing. Unfortunately, our current system doesn't allow for asset by asset security. We can put a security tag on it, but it doesn't actually do anything with the asset, which is tricky. So we have to be very, very granular with who we're letting into which segment of the system.
Come on, tell us who the sexiest man alive is. Thought it was my year. So what we do with our dam is kind of category-based permissions. So every asset that comes in is tagged with at least one or multiple categories. And then as we onboard users, we can say, okay, these this new user has access to these categories, but not these. So for example, with our image collections, we may have some stuff that is from Getty, we may have some stuff that's from Upper Deck, and other stuff that we shoot ourselves. And there's different contractual deals with each company, and if, let's just say for example, we have 50% ownership of certain things, but we need permission to use it, we don't necessarily want everybody to see that. So we'll give them access to just the stuff that we shoot ourselves. And with that, we can sort of do blanket permissions and say, okay, these people can see this, but you can see everything. You know, another example would be our document archive. We have 100-year-old documents that the PR department has kept. And we scan them all, but they haven't had time to review them all to make sure that, you know, this is fair game for everybody to use. So we want to wait until they have time to really get in there and see what we're putting out there. So right now, it's only PR that has access to that stuff, and me. So, but I can't tell you who the sexiest man alive is. So that's kind of our approach to permissioning at this point. Now, the last question I want to bring up before we open it up to your questions is, you know, we touched on this a little bit before the break, but I think that with DAM, more than the technology conversation, there's frustrations in dealing with creative teams. And now, don't throw anything, settle down. But what do you guys need from your creative teams? What are you not getting? What are the frustrations that you deal with in your day-to-day, and how can people on that side make an effort to make your life easier? And you'll get your turn.
So our production design team delivers a lot of our final approved artwork for us to put on the site. And I know I'm going to sound super cool right now, but I'm really passionate about file naming. I want everything to be uniform. We have specific abbreviations for shows, content types, collection types, guides, what everything is a part of. So not only can you click through on the facets, but then if you take the asset out of the DAM, you still know exactly what it is that you're looking for. So I find it a struggle sometimes to, when we get the assets for approval to put on the site, that they're not named correctly, that I don't know what they are, that the form that they're providing with it that gives me information on where to classify it and where to put it, that sometimes they're not giving enough information. So it's just kind of figuring out how we can better do this process to make it more efficient so that we're getting what we need from them, so we can get everything tagged on the asset, so when it gets into the DAM that it's exactly where it needs to be.
I don't have any frustrations with our creative people. I feel like my job is
Who's buying her drinks?
No, I don't. I mean, my job is to help them so that they're not frustrated. I mean, that's what I'm there for. And I think that anybody, I don't know. I don't have any frustrations with the team. I would say I have challenges with what it means to build a DAM, and especially at a nonprofit, and I'm a team of one. So if anything, I have challenges to overcome, but, you know, it's just a matter of setting expectations and, you know, once in a while trying to get an occasional assistant, you know, asking for more interns, things like that are more what I'm interested in. But I really love my creative team, and I'm there to help them. So if they're frustrated, I'm not doing my job right.
I could speak a little more on some frustrations. One thing I would say that has popped up at the stops in my career, and I think this is something, as humans, we're always interested in what's the latest and greatest toy, like what's the newest and prettiest technological advance I can have, like what's the coolest thing out there. That's all well and good, and I know, especially in the video business, you know, we're making leaps and bounds. It seems like every month something new and cool is coming out. But I think the production teams could really help us people out on the back end by really understanding their delivery specs more, and also building in some of the time for ingest and the application of metadata. But most specifically on the delivery specs, you know, as I said, we distribute to everything from quick hit news to you know, TV features. And you know, if we're going to be shooting something like a travel and leisure or a Sports Illustrated swimsuit where there's lots of scenics, like, yeah, then maybe then it makes sense to shoot 8K RAW because that's something we're going to reuse over and over and over again, and you really want to get like the absolute highest quality video you could ever get. But if you're shooting, a 3-minute piece and you're going to interview the cast of The Walking Dead or whatever, well, maybe you don't need 8K RAW. And then if you shoot that, it's not really nice to yell at the team that's ingesting it for you that it's going to take too long because we have to down convert it to a format you can actually use in. So I think really understanding where your products are going and where they're going to be aired and where they're going to be viewed. So if someone's looking at something on their phone, like, it does not need to be 8K. Like, HD is just fine. But if it's going to go on TV, or if it's going to be something that we're going to use forever, if you're interviewing, a president or a world leader or something like that, great. Like, but just plan in that time for turnaround because it's going to happen.
Oh, that was shorter than I expected from you. I think that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make things better for creative people and for operations people to be able to put their stuff somewhere and get back to it later. And sometimes that takes a little bit of lift on your end. Because we don't know everything about a project. If it's like a few small points of data that you can put into the dam to give somebody something to find it later, you're going to be able to do that way better than we can. So we need your expertise to a certain degree before we can automate everything else. And that's kind of one of the things that I've run into, not necessarily with the NHL, but just in general, where we need help. And it needs to be teams working together instead of just, hey, can you do this? Or here's the stuff, go put it somewhere. So that we really get what everybody needs out of it. And when you go look for it later, it's the way that you want it to be. With that, we'll open it up for questions, or you guys can tell us what you think.
Hi. How do you deal with clearance rights or like rights to use to the image? Do you manage that through your dam?
For us, we manage that through our images department. So somebody can go to the dam and find something they think they want to use, but they have to get that cleared with the images group, who is more tuned into the contracts and understanding what can be used for certain situations. Anybody else?
Most of the stuff at Nickelodeon is cartoon animated work, so like a lot of it's already approved. With the live action shows, we have a separate system that kind of deals with a lot of the press and photography and approvals through that. So that's kind of done in another system, but it does also feed into our dam as well.
I would say we own probably 90% of the content we work with, whether it's the video we're shooting, whether we're getting something from our photo department or any of our writing departments. But that said, we do license a fair amount of footage from the Gettys and news sources of the world. And really, that involves super fun meetings with my team with legal, where they tell us the retention policies, where we have to be very, very specific. So we have to tag everything that goes into the system with the source of who owns it, and then basically get rid of it after we're not allowed to hold it anymore. Our legal department is very clear that we are not an archive for things we don't own. And although some of our production teams have been less than happy, like, hey, I made this piece and there's all these photos I licensed from Getty of Cameron Diaz or whatever, like, how am I going to come back to that? I'm like, well, either use photos we own or go download them again, because I do what the lawyers tell me, because it's a good way to keep my job.
I think we had one up here.
I forgot your name, the person from Nickelodeon. You talked about naming conventions. How do you establish that, and how do you control it without people going off and doing their own thing? Because I have that challenge.
I'm still working on that. So I've been with Nickelodeon for about 2 years, and when I first started, that was kind of like one of my main projects. I looked at all of the assets that were currently in the system, and a lot of the TV shows already had specific names, like SpongeBob, SB. So like it kind of follows suit with that. So I just kind of put together a guideline document, anything that you'll need to know. all of the abbreviations that we have, and making notes that if you don't see something here that fits what you think it should be, reach out to us. We'll have a conversation about it, because we don't want to have all of these different content types that are new that people aren't really familiar with. We want to try to limit the amount of classifications that we have. And it's still a struggle. I read this guide and it says all this information in there. I send it to everyone and I'll get questions about it. And it's a struggle, definitely, to get people to follow that, because I think not everyone understands the importance of it. And so going back to what we were saying before about the perception of dam, I think it just needs to be more visible in the company, and people need to understand what exactly it is, because I think that a lot of people don't really understand that.
If no more questions, even other opinions on how you guys maybe have frustrations dealing with your dam teams, because really this is all about getting that conversation going. I mean, we're not here because we're creative operations people. We're here to get a conversation going. So, oh, we got one.
Wondering about the crossover of if any of you are using a MAM system and integrating that with your dam and in terms of production workflows.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the main system I manage actually is the MAM system. We call it a dam because right now we don't actually have like a fully functional proper dam. Our dam is the cloud-based repository, which is used by our marketing and licensing folks, but for the most part, any good MAM system or dam system that has open APIs, you'll be able to build a pretty good integration into, and that's actually one of the big projects we're working on right now, is how if you mark something final in our MAM, it immediately goes up to our dam and pops up another box where you enter in the distribution metadata and then off it goes. So that's the big project we're doing right now.
Very similar to that, when we move over to a new system, we have, there's another team that handles all of the on-air stuff, and it has all of the episodes, all of anything that's ever aired on Nickelodeon, and we think it would be really helpful to the creative teams if there was a way that there could be a page maybe for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and there's a link to all of the episodes that will then open up in another window so that they can watch the episode, find the scene that they need, and then go back to the dam to find the assets that match to it, so they're making sure that they're getting exactly what they need from both systems, kind of in an all-in-one integrated solution.
Any others? Thoughts? Well, with that, thank you.
All right.
Another great discussion.